right, we're back. Welcome, Adrian Wildsmith, back on the podcast today to talk to us about poetry, not your art, but your poetry today. Yeah. So thanks so much for joining us. Really good to see you
Thank you for having
again.
me. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so you're not just an amazing artist, but you are also an amazing poet as well. So I wanted to just bring you on and get you to sort of just talk us through where your journey with poetry
Mm,
started, really, and yeah, how you
mm,
found it and what you do with it and how you use it.
mm. Wow, journey of poetry. Well, I mean, again, it kind of goes back to my earlier times of my mental health.
Mm,
I um fortunately had fortunately, I think life helped me restart. Needed me to restart, and I found myself in a pretty dark place, really, to be honest. Well, very dark for a number of years. And it was kind of things got taken out of my life, which for me, I thought at the time were really, really important. But on reflection, when I look back now,
mm,
they weren't, it was more about, you know, where I worked, what I did,
mm,
I think who I thought the outside world saw me as. And that when that got kind of pulled back because I ended up not being able to work, which I'd never done in my life before. I was I would like to think that my work ethic was really quite high. I ran a number of businesses, I was very creative,
mm,
in a more businessy sense. Um, and that all went, I just couldn't cope. There was just no way of coping with it. And through a course of events, I had to really, really slow down to the point where I wasn't slowing down enough.
right.
Life was still, I was still seeking that need for validation, if you like, that need for um, almost keeping this mask up, and I needed to keep it polished, and I needed to keep, well, I'm a dad and I'm a businessman and I'm this, I'm X,
That
Y, and Z, whatever,
identification,
yeah,
yeah. Mm,
whatever it was. And
mm,
I think, and eventually, I just remember it all completely getting stripped back. And so bad that I was sleeping in my car, back in the day. And I mean, that's really a very unpleasant, shameful, almost, embarrassing, very, very bloody confusing for me
mm,
when I'd come from, having two cars on the drive or whatever, and
yeah.
flying around the world and, doing my job, whatever it was, and
Mm,
being a director of, sort of a number of businesses, and it all just went poof, just went right. Okay, enough. And so through as that journey kind of opened out, and I basically thought it was the end of my life. I mean,
right.
I really felt. I mean, I didn't want to leave necessarily, but I certainly had those thoughts.
Yeah, yeah.
But and they would come and go, but I was just like, I'm just very confused. Can someone please? There's either mistake here. I'm
Yeah.
sure someone's going to rectify it, and they'll
Yeah.
knock on my car window and go, mate, you're not meant. Sorry, we made a mistake. It's all right.
Bad
Everything,
dream.
And
Yeah.
yeah, you wake up out of this dream, but it didn't happen.
Mm,
It just did not happen. But I remember going through a definite period of I'm going to wake up in a minute. I really am going to wake up. It's all going to be okay. I'm going to wake up in a minute. And I just didn't.
mm,
Um, and then I remember only being able to listen to things. I could only listen to recordings, podcasts or whatever, just something to distract myself. But even they weren't. The voice in my head was so loud, I just couldn't. I just couldn't kind of
Yeah.
relax or do anything. And then and then I tried to write. And I remember on a couple of occasions trying to do it, and I just couldn't do it. I mean, my brain literally melted. It was just so difficult to kind of put something down on paper because I
Not what,
just
not just write anything, not creative, just
anything, yeah,
trying to write.
pretty much anything, even
Okay.
just an email or a text
Okay.
message was really difficult to do. I couldn't assimilate. I had to get help to do that in the early stages.
Are you dyslexic? Do I remember you telling me you're dyslexic? Right.
Yeah.
So you've got that going on
So
as
there's that
well.
going on, but it never impaired me before. I mean, I always kind of found a way around it, you know.
Mm,
But this was just a complete shutdown. And then I'm trying to think, well, and then I gradually began to, I think it was almost in correlation to when I began to accept what was happening to me. And I sort of almost in my body understood that perhaps I was safer than I thought I was,
mm,
and that things were going to be okay. Even though the outward world, I was sleeping on a sofa or I was, you know, in this bedroom with three-quarters of the room had mold growing up it and you know and vines coming in through the window, and so every night you've got this breeze coming in freezing and you couldn't shut it, and you know I mean it wasn't particularly the best environment, but almost like there was this, well, you've got a roof over your head,
yeah.
you are in a bed. If you absolutely needed some water, you could go downstairs and you know, because a friend of mine allowed me to stay in this place, and I think I began to kind of accept that things weren't quite as bad as I'd understood them to be. Once I'd accepted the fact that the things that I held very important at a certain point in my life
Mm,
had gone and they were
okay.
never coming back.
Mm,
Being a dad, and I think one of the hardest things was being a father and not being a father in the way that I understood fatherhood to be. Not seeing my children, you know,
yeah.
daily
Mm,
was I think for any parent is, you know, really traumatic and very difficult to deal with, and I don't think it's I don't think it's acknowledged anywhere near as much as it should be. And but you know, I navigated it. I came to a place of acceptance of it, because
mm,
the more I kept trying to fight it, the further away it got, the more arguments I'd get in potentially with people. I just caused problems. I was trying to get a solution. And of course, you then get angry or you get frustrated, or people are, you don't feel like you're being recognized or you're being heard. And you end up internalizing that, and you just don't get out of the loop. And the moment I kind of hit that point of acceptance and I think there was someone said to me once, there's a difference between pain and suffering, and that pain is actually quite a natural part of life,
mm,
and it is an indicator. It's kind of a communication. It's something that's life's trying to tell you something. Where suffering is so much more psychologically based, and we have a choice around it.
mm,
And the more we resist something, the less we will you know
yeah.
the more basically the more uncomfortable it becomes, and it gets painful, and I do think there was a real definite, when someone got me to understand that there was a distinct difference, that pain was somatic and suffering was psychological. I Once I began to accept the psychological pain, the suffering kind of began to drop,
Mm,
and there was still the pain, but suddenly it was somatic. It was much more experiential. I was much more in the. I was then more in the moment of it,
mm,
and it was more fluid, and there was a lot of energy around it. So my body kind of, I've noticed that I was relaxing more. Things were getting much more even and better. And then lots of things began to improve. So then till finally, I remember, in fact, I think it was the Artist's Way and morning pages practice that finally I reached a place where I could kind of write. But when I write, and I don't know whether many other people are like this, but I've always written in capitals.
Have you? Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And I've never, and I do remember the first time I ever wrote something. I remember, I think it was, I was being told off at school and I wasn't getting my spelling correct.
Okay.
And I remember, I felt like I just wasn't being heard. And I just remember, and at a time when I was really struggling as a young boy, I was still dealing with having come through a car accident, and I'd hit my head, and this is where the cognitive functioning became, limited. It became impaired, and I remember just starting, I don't want to do this, all in big sort of letters. There was no, I mean, I used to be able to join up, and I can do quite nice. It actually is quite fluid.
Yeah, when you do your signature on your art pieces, is that capitals?
Well, there's kind of my normal signature, but then yeah, I do have. I'm just trying to see where one
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
But yeah, it is actually capitalized.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That is capitalized, but it's kind of stylized a bit more.
yeah.
Yeah. And I guess when I do that, it feels like you're more in control. There's a
Oh,
bit of control
interesting.
around it.
Okay.
It's like, right,
Yeah,
I am here,
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
So yeah, so with the Artist's Way and the morning pages, I kind of began to dabble with that and set myself the challenge of why don't you just write something in the morning,
Such a powerful
every
book.
morning. And it is, yeah, very
Yeah.
powerful. And I guess, I mean, I hadn't thought about it until we talked about it. In fact, clearing up my desk so I could
Mm,
make some space. It was on my desk and I
yeah.
kind of moved it and I just thought, oh yeah, I remember that. And I've actually got the full book which I completely filled. And then, I've got five books on now, sort of reaching something like, nearly 1,000 poems. I'm
Mm,
getting quite close to
wow.
that now, I think. So poetry, the day that I recognized that there was more going on than I realized was when I was working for Mind, and
Mm,
I was working on a project called BBO, and it was about helping people break down barriers who were the furthest away from society.
okay.
And I was in a one-to-one session. I was running a team of mentors, and I was the senior lead, and I had a client I was sat with, bless her, and we sat together, and she was really, really distraught. I mean, really,
Mm,
really distraught and really struggling. And I'd been doing my practice for quite a while, and just impromptu, I just said, um, "I've got something I'd like to read to you. Would you be okay with that?" And she said yes. I pulled my basically I got my morning pages book, if you like,
yeah.
in my bag, and I pulled it out, opened it up, and it was on the I should have kind of found it really. I could share it, but it was on the topic of war, but war within ourselves.
Mm,
And I was still wrestling with it. And I basically read this to her, and she just broke down in tears, and I wasn't pretty much far behind her. And she said, I'd never realized you were a poet.
yeah.
And it really shocked me. And I'm like, well, I'm just writing my morning journal. But actually, now I look back, it is very poetic.
Poetic. Well,
It
it's a
has a lot of,
the morning pages are a pouring out of your soul, aren't they? I mean, I've done morning
yeah,
pages for many, many years. That book really had an
mm,
impact on my life as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And they're an outpouring of your mind, of your soul, of your heart.
absolutely.
And to share that with somebody actually is quite brave. I don't think I'd ever share mine with anybody.
Mm. Yeah.
You're braver than I
Yeah,
am.
well, and you see, that's the point, isn't it? And I guess that's the thing that you then. I think I was so sick of being sick, Cheryl.
Yeah.
I
Is it a release? Was it a
yeah,
release?
well, yeah, and so you end up that what yeah we might term as bravery. It's just like, oh, for God's sake, I've had enough of this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just it's a real radical acceptance, because and not out of any virtuous approach other than please
Yeah.
make this stop.
Okay.
And the only way that this is going to stop is I've got to accept what's going on here, because there's a part of me that is just constantly fighting and it's not giving up. And
Mm.
because I don't think it's not safe. It does not feel safe. It's never felt safe. And I've got to take, it's almost like this wild stallion that just won't settle. And I just had to grab the reins and say, okay,
Mm.
you know, and that's what poetry does for me. And so from there, it's obviously evolved.
So it gives it structure. I suppose it gives like a wild energy that's flowing through you. It gives it structure. Is
Yeah.
that is that is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I would say that. And my, I mean, I've got no training. I've got
Mm.
absolutely, it's all completely ad lib. It's all, I'm trying to think of what our dear wonderful friend Tony,
Mm.
who did the workshop, didn't he, last
Yeah,
week
yeah,
for us
yeah.
at the celebration of gifts event. And Kate, at Kate's party, and he's just got a technical wizardry which is amazing. And when you
Mm.
listen to him I mean, I hear him regularly every month. We're together in a poetry group kind of setting, and which you can kind of practice your poetry, and you
Mm.
get those that you feel absolutely comfortable with to share with. And yeah, I think my version of it's because of the dyslexia. I think I really, really struggled to kind of, um, I was very, very hypercritical,
Okay.
because I kind of because Kate, bless her, she'll kind of very gently say, "You've invented a new word." But and I'm like, okay. But actually, as I began to settle with that, going, well, what's wrong with that? That's amazing,
Yeah.
because that's how language
It's
evolves.
formed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and there's words being added to the Oxford Dictionary, whatever the official kind of, you know, book of language for the English language has been added to, and you're thinking,
Yeah.
well, we it's a tool and we invent it. And I think I began again to relax and accept and allow myself to kind of go
Mm.
with that. Don't know whether that answers your question, because I completely forgot what your question
Yeah,
was now.
no, that's just
We're on the right
yeah.
lines.
I
Yeah,
really wanted to just find out, yeah, what put you on the path
yeah.
of discovering your poetry and your writing. So yeah, that definitely gives us
Mm,
a bit of an insight. So and it fascinates me that you're dyslexic. I don't really know too much about dyslexia. Can you give us a brief
mm,
insight into what your dyslexia looks like, and and
yeah,
how you just yeah, how you work with the words and put them together? Because
yeah,
when you read your poetry, it just flows, and there's no it flows well, and I don't hear any sort of hesitation or
right.
anything that doesn't really work. So it fascinates me how you make that work with
Yeah.
dyslexia.
So I've never actually been formally diagnosed with dyslexia,
Okay.
but I, because I had a head injury, I was in a car accident 4.5,
Mm.
and I hit my head. I mean, you might just see the scars here. I had a significant scarring on my face
Mm.
from the age of 4 for quite a long time. And um, it's, I went to a neurologist, and basically they did a number of tests on me, and my executive functioning and my short-term memory, so which impacts, as I understand it, my ability to spell in particular,
Mm.
is, and with the short-term memory as well, is massively impaired. So when they did the test, I think, you know, kind of the average score was, you know, you need to be hitting, you know, out of 10. The average population apparently would hit about 7 or 8, you know, or above. You know, there's
Okay.
kind of the, you know, on that scale. And I was struggling to get to 2.
Oh, okay.
You know, and I think he was being polite. I think I know looked on the scoring when he gave me the sheet afterwards, and I was barely coming out of any of it.
Right.
You know, I was almost um that executive functioning is so low, it's almost not there. So I have to completely rely on, and here we go again. If I try and I really, really force myself to try and remember, it becomes mentally actually quite painful. Like, the stress really,
Oh,
really
really?
builds up, and to a level where I would start to get dizzy, and I'd just shut down. It just can't, you know, it just doesn't seem to happen.
Mm,
And that might be because back in the day, I think had there been treatments there, possibly there might have been a way of kind of helping me relearn, but it
mm.
never happened.
Okay.
So it's kind of almost this maladaptive presentation, this maladaptive way.
Mm,
Well, how can I get around it? And I couldn't even tell you because it's so wired in now.
yeah.
Um, I but there is, I suppose, there is this confidence, which is a really weird kind of feeling that it's almost as if I know it's there, but I can't really access it because I can articulate myself and I'm quite comfortable
Mm,
talking to, I could talk to hundreds of thousands of people. It really wouldn't bother me at all,
mm.
which, I mean, I might get a little bit nervous, but you know, but actually I'm okay with it. And I think, and I seem to be able to, it's the visual and the auditory. So it's when I hear it and I can see it in picture form. Because when I write, the only way that I can write is to formulate a word. I need to remember the shape of it,
Oh, the shape of the word
the
written.
shape, the shape of the words and how they interrelate to each one. And
Okay.
that's how I spell.
That's
I can't
fascinating.
I can't do it. It's all based on shape. So I can't remember it perhaps the way that maybe Kate might remember it, or you even might be able to do it in terms of how you're taught to spell.
Well, there's no
Mine is
recall. I don't think when I write, there's no recall happening. I don't think there's no cognitive process happening. I'm just doing it.
right,
So yeah, to
right.
hear you say
And
that,
I
that's
and I,
that's so alien.
I
Yeah.
yeah, and I have to create a picture of it first before I can put it down.
Right.
I can't and that's why I could spell your name, because I will struggle with the Y and the L.
Okay. Yeah.
And I actually needed to go and look down, and I needed, and the what, but the interesting thing is the Y and the L, which is quite an unusual shape within a formation of the English letter,
Mm,
or, you know, a word, your name.
mm.
Um, it triggers, and then it's a and I know okay, it's not an S, it's curvy. All right, it's a C, it's a, yeah, and then there's like a tall building that sits next to the C, and that's a H.
Okay.
And then usually, because I know that there's a Y and an L at the end, and it's unusual, it feels jarring to finish with an L. Okay, that's the bookends. That's the two ends of the
Okay.
of your name, and then sure, and then okay. I think there's something in the middle, and
Mm.
it'll come out.
That's
it's it's it's
fascinating.
it's that, but I'll tell you, it's exhausting,
I bet it
and
is. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have to just kind of let it go. So weirdly, I mean, if you read my poetry and you actually saw what I'd written, I mean, pretty much most of it is misspelled, very
Okay.
likely. But which is really weird because this is what Kate says. She says, I don't know how you do this, but I will then so like you're saying, when I read it to you,
Mm.
it's like it goes through a refiltering
Oh,
and a recalibration, and it all comes out correctly.
yeah,
But
yeah.
actually, if you were to read it as I wrote it, it'd be like, oh.
Okay.
But it goes in my head and I spit it out. It comes
Yeah,
out correct because
yeah,
I don't know how that happens,
yeah, yeah.
but
It's
it sounds
interesting.
it seems a very long way round of doing
It's
it, but it's extremely labor intensive and
sounds it.
but it's almost there's just a bit missing. So I'm having to navigate round it when actually it should the memory should just take care of it. I mean, I don't know. I don't really
Yeah.
understand the neurological
Yeah,
kind of.
sounds like you've really developed coping strategies,
Yeah,
mechanisms, and
yeah,
they probably take up a lot of energy, don't they, by the sounds of it. However, on
yeah,
you're evidently you've tapped into some massive creativity, some
yeah,
real
yeah.
a real flow of creativity there that you're
Mm,
packing in and
mm,
building with. So it's
yeah,
yeah, and a really interesting story and process that you've got there. Really is.
yeah.
Have you got some poetry that you want to share with us? Have you got something that you could share with us now? Because you do a
Uh,
lot of pieces to camera, don't you, for your
I do,
Facebook
I do.
profile. So if you were to have anything published, do you think that somebody you'd have to translate, so to speak, to put it onto
Yeah, I
paper?
yeah. I mean, I've started a few years back. I actually, it's a really good point. I was terrified about writing it down because
Mm,
I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know how to correct it, and so I would speak it,
mm,
which is why I do it to camera.
mm.
So I'm fairly, and I'm sure probably if people read my posts or they look at my posts on Facebook, then it may not be. I mean, I put it through, various kind of grammar filters and and spell checkers and stuff, just to make sure, because I will look at a word one way and I'll think it's correct, then I'll look at it and there'll be this little something in my head that will go, that's not right.
Okay.
But I could not tell you what's wrong with it. But the only thing I could say is the shape's wrong.
The shape, yeah. So
Yeah,
you're working with form a lot, aren't you? Because you work
yeah,
with form a lot with your artwork as well.
yeah.
It's art is form, isn't it? So
It is,
you're
yeah.
using that with your words as
That
well. It's
visual, yeah,
fascinating, yeah. So
yeah,
you've got something you want to share with us? Let's have a
yeah. Well,
listen
let's
to
see.
something.
Yeah, I wonder if I go back to very early days. Let me just go go back to my book back
Yeah,
in the
give us a
day.
contrast of something quite early and then maybe
Yeah, maybe give you something really,
something
really early.
recent. Yeah.
In fact, there's one that I yeah, I mean, it's just quite well, we can try this. So um I wrote this back in 2022.
Oh, okay.
So it's quite a long time ago. Um, yeah, I've not read this for ages, so bear with me and we'll see how we go. So
Yeah.
here we go. So, um, oh, which to follow, heart or mind, to witness, to see, to ponder on such common a thing. Two paths within, both seemingly so right. One with voice of a gentle breeze, the other a frosty morn, or perhaps a merchant upon a street corner selling his wares, regaling us with stories threaded with promises of lands far away and sunsets dripping with blood-red desire. Oh, what to do? Which to follow? Are they not but the same? A torrid confusion of grasping for that which is not there. Illusions pitted against illusion, hidden within the notion that once selected, once chosen, all else is lost. The other is surely no more. Moon or sun, but not both. And yet, just beyond the gentle breeze, just to the left of the merchant's stall, just to the left of the merchant's stall, just a little distance that cannot be measured, there, just there. Do you see the flower, white petals, yellow crown, poking, bobbing to and fro out of the crack, a grey pavement, a chipped flagstone, its home. Oh, which to choose, head or heart, not for the flower, for it stands bold in adversity in all its magical luminosity.
Yeah, lovely.
Mm.
Wonderful. So what was that born from? What was the inspiration for that?
I think it was probably a day, when we're in that confusing state, aren't we? Where there's that sometimes for us, and certainly for me, it will, which to follow. I've
Yeah.
got work to do. I need to go to work today, but actually, I really like to work on my art. Heart or mind. And then it says here to witness and to see, to ponder on such a common thing. Two paths within. So there's that. It's recognizing that struggle, that kind of
Inner turmoil.
tension
Yeah,
that
inner tension.
that kind of goes on. And then this, it sort of says here, one with the voice of a gentle breeze, the other a frosty morn, or perhaps a merchant upon a street corner selling his wares, regaling us with stories studded with promises of lands far away and sunsets dripping with blood red desire. And I think it's almost like there's that part of you that gets lost in the you're being drawn into things that aren't really what your heart's desire is, but you get distracted, like a merchant on a street corner going, oh, do you fancy this is really good, sure, and you're like, wow, yeah, that'd be great, but actually it's completely distracting, and it's taking you away from actually what you're
from your heart.
From your heart, and it creates this incredible confusion, and it's all around us. And then I suppose it was just suddenly like you could be standing right next to somebody and they're giving you all, and you've got to have this Rolex, it's the best in the world, whatever it is, this wonderful thing. And they're trying to sell it to you. And then just to your left, just down on the cobblestones, there's a flower that just appears there's no earthly reason why it should come through the concrete.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of saying, hey, well, why are you worrying about this? I'm here. If I can do it, and I guess it just sort of slowly. I'm kind of, I don't know how it. And again, it was a picture. So there was this picture that came of this struggle and of this person that's trying to figure out how to move forward in their life, and then, but in the smallest of cracks, it says here, and yet just beyond the gentle breeze, just to the left of the merchant's stall, just a little distance that cannot be measured, there, just there. The flower, white petals, yellow crown, do you see? Bobbing, poking to and fro out of the crack. A grey pavement, a chipped flagstone, its home. So even the most kind of seemingly grey and dull and awful kind of living conditions, which is very much like, I suppose, now thinking about it, when I go back to the room that I ended up being in, which was, there was nothing on the walls other than lots of mold. There was absolutely no sense of life whatsoever. It was very depressing, frankly. There was vines coming through and it blocked out the light, and you couldn't shut it properly. So you were exposed to the outside a bit, but you weren't able to lock it because the vines had grown so much over it, and it was slowly blocking out the light. And yet, here it's saying a chipped flagstone, its home, on which to choose, head or heart, not for the flower. It's kind of going, well, I'm here and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm all right, and it's blooming and it looks wonderful.
A little reality check.
Yeah. So that's kind of that was definitely one of them. But
so that was back in 2022. So when did you start writing poetry? I mean, we've talked about how you started it. Was it just a recent thing then?
Yeah. So I mean, let's have a look. What's the date here? I think it was around 2019.
Okay, so that's only 6 years ago, 5, 6 years ago. It's not an awful long time ago, is it? So it's quite quite a
Well,
recent venture for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
very, very much. Yeah, very. But I think, and like my art has really only sort of properly blossomed in the last 2 years. You know,
Mm,
that's but the poetry's kind of really
yeah. Yeah.
informed that.
So you do poetry pieces to go with, to match your art pieces, don't you? To
I
that
do.
they work together. So
Yeah,
um yeah, I think I really like the bumblebee one that you did. So you did a
yes,
beautiful bumblebee. Maybe have you got
did.
that to hand?
I do. What you mean,
The
as in
poet, the
the
poem.
poem? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
I
then
do.
we can, and when we can put
Ye-
the image up on the screen for
Yeah,
people
yeah.
to see.
Let me
um
find it. Yeah.
this piece
Uh,
really really lovely. It's
let me
such an
just.
inspiration.
Yeah. Buzz, buzz, buzz. You spread your little wings. They all say you cannot fly. You fluffy, rotund little thing. They all say that you defy the laws of gravity, of aerodynamics, of laws, of rules, ones we wrote, but you do not obey. And yet, here you are. You defy the odds, and you are king, you little bumblebee. So small and yet so great, without you to pollinate, where would we be? A colorless world, nature perhaps not so bright, for you are the linchpin, the fulcrum of our destiny and our delight. For you are the bearer of our light, of every spectrum and colored explosion that is of our world, of wild things, of flowers, crops beyond our imaginings. O bumblebee, you are our rock, for you defy our laws of gravity. O you rotund little bumblebee, how you are a reminder, the bearer of light, of sweet honey and our nectar, of explosive rainbow light.
So beautiful. And it just works so well with
With the piece.
the piece. The
Yeah, it does.
explosion of color and light. It's just such an
Yeah, yeah,
impactful piece, isn't it?
yeah.
It's
And
lovely,
I
really
and I
nice.
put that to so I record myself creating, as you know, and then I overlay the poem onto it. And I think that gives, and it's another level. So interestingly, it's then beginning to combine these elements. And again, it's all very, very visual.
Mm,
So I interplay them both. And I think once I've worked out how I could step around, I guess, the chasm that had been formed in my head, you know, where I can't spell, you
mm,
know, or if I do, it's just so intermittent, you know, or I can't link things. Where to be able to really use that, turn it into a bit of a superpower, you know, okay,
mm.
it's really about, so what are you good at? What can you do? And how can you link things? How can you forget about what you can't do, Adrian? Tell me what you can do.
Mm.
What can you do? What are you able to work with? What, you know, and that's the thing. I think that was been the biggest lesson for me. Once I began to get that and go and put heart and passion to it, then it just exploded, which is
Yeah.
and kind of this is an example of that, you
Oh,
know.
well done. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Round of applause.
It is a beautiful piece, isn't
Fantastic.
it? And
Yeah.
that was written in one go.
Oh, okay.
There's no real changes. I mean, I often what I do is the only editing I do, and it's really weird, kind of bit of an interesting ritual or practice that I do.
Mm,
I will very rarely cross it out. I put it in a bracket
okay.
and I leave it. And it's almost like it's intentional in the sense that I want to respect the word that's been placed there, but actually I'm not going to cross you through, which suggests that I'm rejecting you and you don't exist. I'm acknowledging that that was there, but I'm actually just allowing you to be, and I'm working around you, but I
Yes.
acknowledge you
It's a
because you
great
actually got me.
respect. Mm,
Yeah, yeah. So I'm really trying to respect, and so you'll find that I mean, there is the odd little bit, but there's a couple here, but it's very, very rare. And that was all that that's written in one go. There's no kind of, I don't, because the moment, if I was starting to kind of, in the early days, if I started to try and work out a destination of where I want to get to, I fail. It wouldn't work.
Okay.
I crash. So I've got to just hold the feeling and the very rough edges of, and it's an emotion. I usually
Okay.
get an emotion that comes up, and then it's almost like will o' the wisp. I just follow the emotion and go, okay, I'm going to come with you now, and then the words come along
Right.
on their own.
Fascinating.
You know,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
just drop onto the page. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I sit back and I go, wow, because I have no idea where it came from. And even now, I remember every time if I listen to it and then and I put sort of music to it, because I think I posted it recently again, this particular piece.
Okay.
And it gets very emotional, suddenly it really starts to kind of bring up the emotions and does things that you just,
Mm.
you wouldn't. And I think this was a reverence to how nature played such a significant part in my recovery,
Mm.
and acknowledging that. And then I think, with the little bit of research I did and really getting to understand the bee's place in our world, and actually just having some frigging respect for it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
actually saying, look, hang on a minute, um, don't take it for granted. Every little piece in our world is there for a reason and it's significant.
Yeah.
Don't just don't just ignore it.
Mm.
And even though the bee is this tiny little fellow, they have a huge part to play in our lives, and not to take that for granted. And it was acknowledging that. And I think when when we write anything, we draw anything, we paint, we express ourselves, there's a vibration going out
Mm.
that people are going to connect with that, and that's going to further, and perhaps the next time they see a bee, they'll remember
Mm.
the poem or parts of it, or actually more importantly, how it made them feel.
Yeah.
And there's just that little bit more awareness and consideration for the natural world,
Yeah.
and the world around us.
Absolutely. I think I received the bee image as
Yeah.
a real celebration of the bee. For me,
Yes.
it was there's a lot of excitement in that image, and there's a lot of energy, buzzy, not buzzy energy. I don't mean buzzy as in the bee, but
No.
it's a real high vibration buzz to that piece that you did, and
Yeah. Mm.
yeah, it felt like a celebration, and I think
Mm.
that's really, that is what the artist does, isn't it? It celebrates and expresses
Mm.
through the pieces, isn't it?
Mm.
It's a real gift to be able to do that. You sound, as you were speaking back then, it sounds like there's this real element of being this conduit. You say the words
Mm.
just, they just fall out
Mm.
onto the page,
They,
and so
they, they literally, I think that's a really accurate way of putting it. They do actually fall onto
yeah.
the page, bizarrely.
So
Yeah.
there's an element of letting go, I think, for people that do struggle with
Mm.
art, with words, whatever art that
Mm.
they're creating. There is an importance, isn't there, of being able to let go so that can flow
Mm.
through. Definitely, we all have our
Yeah,
different methods, don't we? But
we
I
do,
think
we
there is
do,
something
we
to be
do.
said for letting go, stepping back, and letting
Mm.
something move through us,
Yeah.
because often that's how the good stuff comes.
Yeah, and you're right. You're absolutely right. And we are our barrier. We are we can be our greatest friend or our poorest.
Mm.
And I know I certainly can in my experience. And I think for me, it was learning to have some fun
Mm.
and to be curious about, well, what if I wrote this? What would it do?
Okay.
And what if I wrote this? Would it help someone? And I always have this one thing I do intentionally kind of bring forward and it's usually me actually. In that, if I wrote this, would Adrian be better for it?
Okay. Yeah, it's a nice perspective.
And um by association, the next person that I would perhaps that would hear it would also be better for it. Because if
Mm.
I'm better for it, then it stands to reason you cannot not have at least one other
No,
human on the
yeah.
planet with two ears.
Mm.
They will also receive
That
that
it
and the
definitely.
same. And
Mm.
and I think that's but I think to your point you were mentioning that is about being brave enough to understand in your own awareness that actually you're okay,
Mm.
that you are safe, but you've got to experience it. And it took me years, but I think when you intentionally, because I know we've talked quite a bit about being stuck, haven't we?
Mm.
And that I come from a place now, and for anyone that's listening to this that's struggling with that, you know, there is this deep sense within them that they have a voice or they
Mm-hmm.
have a song that they're not singing and they're desperate to sing it and they know they can it's almost tantalizing. It's on the end of it. It's right here. It's
Mm.
just so visceral, but they're almost like it's just not happening. And I would say to anyone like that is just consider, are you trying too hard?
Mm.
I've got a thing that I noticed in the early days when I was particularly more in my art than in my poetry was that I suddenly found myself it's almost like a syndrome that came up, which was the chasing, where suddenly I'd hit this and I'd get it, I'd get it, I'd experience this level of creative exuberance, and then I'd want to repeat it. So
Okay.
I'd start to chase it.
Right.
It became an object, and a bit like, well, I really want that really nice, cool looking car. So, because it makes me feel good,
Mm.
I've done this piece of art or poetry, and I need to repeat it because it was so good, and I could do it again. And every single time I absolutely failed, I crashed and it
Okay.
didn't work
Okay.
because I was trying too hard. I wasn't allowing the process and accepting it. I was trying to predetermine it. And then this is in my case. And that's when you get stuck. And I think that is driven by fear because I was frightened I wouldn't experience it again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
to grab hold of it. I became attached to it. I thought I've got to do this again because I can't lose this.
Mm.
It's just so amazing. I've got to, and of course, and guess what happens? You do lose it
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
because you hold
Anything
to
if you're
your
acting from fear,
yeah,
that's never going to
yeah,
lead to anywhere
yeah,
positive, is it? So,
yeah,
yeah, interesting piece of advice. Fantastic.
yeah,
Have you got
yeah.
another piece that you want to read before we wrap it up? Something
Yeah,
maybe a bit more recent. Yeah.
yeah. So I love cinema.
Okay.
I love going to the cinema, and one day I love, as I mean, me and Kate, massive fans of animation. We
Yeah.
just love that
Yeah.
anyway. We're just big kids, and we love it. But I went to see the movie which only came out, I think, late last year. It might have been The Wild Robot.
Yes.
Um, and I was just very moved by it, and I was moved on several. Obviously, the visuals were again powerful, and I have incredible admiration for, you know, I mean, it's almost a feat of miracles to bring so many people together
Mm.
to produce such, which needs to be orchestrated, and the logistics around that, and the vastness of what the support that needs to go underneath the technology, the planning, what financial, that has to
Yeah.
sit underneath to
Definitely.
create these animations that we kind of just, these moving pictures on the screen, we kind of take them almost for granted now.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
seem to be, we seem to be able to do it so easily. But I kid you not. I mean, I've done a little bit of animation back in my day. It is really hard.
Mm.
But incredible talent, and you know, you're really dedicated, and but it's become an incredible thing now. They've we're almost a science in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but this piece, it was after I'd come back. I think it was the following morning. I was kind of sitting with it, and it's in my latest book, so I just got to try and find it, see where it is. Um, wow, I can't believe I just suddenly realized I'm thinking, no, it can't be, it's the wrong book. But then I realized that this is I'm getting through this book pretty quick,
Oh,
filling,
wow.
filling it up. It's right at the beginning. Wow, I'm like 300 poems back now. Here we go. So here we go. Yeah. Uh, so it's my recent sort of cinema trip that I did. What was the date on it? Trying to find the date now. So yeah, October. It was October last year.
Okay.
So this is kind of, but this is quite a recent, because I'm creating story a lot more now, and kind of playing with story a bit, which is really fun. For what do we hope to find? To watch, to sit there and see images, such beauty flick across the screen. Today I ventured into one of these temples of magic and wizardry, to witness a spectacle, a promise of such reverie. I'd heard that someone had written, painted a children's story upon this moving screen. With popcorn in hand, I settled down as an eager fan, for I was so excited, but I had no idea what I would find upon this moving screen. To my surprise, it was full of lies. It wasn't the distraction I'd come to see, for at its heart, this story told was all about me. A mirror upon a movie screen. The message was plain. For if we truly wish to see, to live in such a place of reverie, then we must become more than we were programmed to be.
Yeah. Wonderful. Love it.
Yeah, and that's basically the strap line of the wild robot is, we must become more than we were
Oh,
programmed to
okay.
be. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the and it's beautiful. It's a very poetic kind of story. So,
Mm.
um, but that's where I'm seem to be going a bit more now.
Okay.
With my poetry, it's becoming more storyfied, which is, I mean, there's kind of a bit of a journey. You go into the cinema,
Mm.
and you're experiencing something. And because I don't know whether I've shared this with you, but I've written a little mini children's book, and I'm
No,
starting
you
to
haven't.
illustrate it, and
Oh,
and
okay.
and that's a bit of a process.
Oh,
So that's
fabulous. Look
that's
forward
wonderful.
to
Yeah.
seeing that. Yeah, yeah, fantastic.
So maybe we could do one on that,
Yeah,
just that, at some point,
absolutely.
which would be awesome. But that's an example of kind of me being a bit more playful now, and actually give myself permission that it's a bit more relaxed, and that it was something that I really enjoyed,
Mm.
much more in the present, and it was about a trip to the movies, and
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see this animation. But I
yeah.
certainly recommend it if you haven't seen it. It's a great one to
Yeah,
watch.
check it out.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Adrian. That's fantastic. It's really lovely to have a chat about how about your process, I think.
Mm,
And
mm.
yeah, love the way you weave your art and your poetry together. So thank you. Keep it up because I'm
Thank you very
definitely
much.
enjoying it.
Well, I
Okay.
love you doing what you do for us, and to have this opportunity to chat with someone, and
Yeah.
it's wonderful. And I've listened to some of the other podcasts, and they're absolutely amazing, and
Yeah.
encourage people to go and listen to them because they're absolutely fantastic. So
Thank you.
thank you
Yeah.
for doing it.
Yeah, it's great to hear about what you're up to and what you're doing, and let's share that. We need to share each
Yeah,
other and lift each other up. I think that's what kind of is motivating me, is sharing and supporting and lifting. So
yeah.
well, I think we all kind of instinctively do it as artists. We do anyway, don't we?
We
So
do. Well, I mean, just a little plug for you. Your singing workshops are just wonderful, and I've done
yeah, thank you.
many of them now, actually. And I
Yeah,
can't. Well, I wouldn't think I could sing, but actually, when we get
yeah,
together, and like we did recently, it was absolutely wonderful. These events that you go to, and Firebird, with Kate, and you
mm,
sing, and you do some fantastic stuff together.
yeah,
I'm always inspired by that, because musically I'm like, oh, I don't really understand it, and you've
mm,
really helped me find a bit of a musical voice
yeah,
that I didn't think I had.
yeah,
But when you bring a community together, and I mean, remember we had, I don't know whether you had it, but it was the most men I've ever sung with,
yeah. Yeah.
in that group. We
Yeah.
did. There were five of us, weren't there?
Yeah.
And it actually, for the first time, I really started to hear the male kind of,
The
sounds coming
dynamic, yeah,
through. The
how it can
dynamic and the
add,
shift
yeah.
was absolutely
Yeah, yeah,
beautiful,
yeah, yeah.
and I loved it. So
Yeah, it's a real treat to get men in the workshops because that dynamic is often missing when we've got just a group of 20 women, maybe, or 15 women. It's wonderful, but when you bring
mm,
in the male dynamic, that there's just you get the contrast and you get the depth, and
mm,
it really adds a whole other dimension to a
it does.
group voice. So I'm always really grateful to get men into the
Yeah, and
workshops.
I love that. And
Mm,
any guy that, if you're listening to this, because we always just immediately think, well, I can't sing. I mean,
mm.
bless them, they look so nervous, like, a rabbit in headlights at first, but they did, didn't they? But they did begin to settle down. Bless them, the majority of them
Yeah,
got up and they gave it a
they
go, and that's all
did.
you could do.
Yeah,
And I thought it was just so wonderful.
and it
I
was
don't know
fun.
whether they're expecting it, but it was like,
Yeah.
okay, I can't really say no now. I
Yeah,
better
I
do
think
this.
people don't realize how much fun it is until they start doing it. And once they've let go, again, letting
Yeah,
go. There's
letting
that
go.
real
Yeah,
power in letting go, isn't it? For something to flow through us, the
yeah,
creativity to flow, and the
yeah,
spirit and the soul to flow through. It can't flow through us if we're holding on tight and fearful. So
yeah,
yeah, and you absolutely inspire me with my
yeah.
artwork. So I think, yeah, listening to your advice, listening to your experience, your journey, it really is an inspiration.
Oh,
And I hope
bless,
it is
thank
to
you.
other people that listen as
Yeah,
well
I
and that
do.
know
Yeah.
you, because you are very good at
Mm,
encouraging and understanding and
mm.
helping people, and you want to make that connection,
I
and that
do.
really comes through with your artwork and with your
Mm.
practices.
That,
So
that's
thank you.
important.
Yeah,
No,
thank you for
thank you.
being you.
Well, you too. And look, and a final, I mean, I don't know whether you've got stuff coming up recently, but I know I really miss the sunny side where we can display the art, where you can do your
Mm,
music with Kate. And it's about community, isn't it?
it
The very point
is.
that you're making, and poetry
Mm,
is very much in that vein. And I think with poetry, it's got this kind of possible reputation that actually, it possibly doesn't deserve. And I hope that I'm explaining my journey and the struggle with it that I've had, and being
mm.
essentially unable to write,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
but find it very, very difficult to be able to find my own voice, that song that sits in you and it is there. You just
mm,
have to give yourself that opportunity to find it. And perhaps, you might need someone to support you,
mm,
or like myself or you, we're out there in the world, and which is why it's so important that we do these things. And
mm.
that's why I want, when you said, would you do another one about poetry? I jumped at it because it's so important to share that
To
with the
share.
world, particularly the world that we live in now, and I
Yeah,
mean, absolute chaos, and we need that. We need to get back to basics, and I think poetry, art, music, song, all these things
yeah,
are really bind the fabric of community, and
yeah.
they are, and without them, we're absolutely lost, for sure.
I know, and I often think it sounds altruistic and it sounds a little bit sort of, pie in the sky. But could you imagine a world where we're all living our true song from our
Mm,
heart, where we're
yeah.
where we're not barriered, we're not boundaried, and we're all
Mm.
just living an expression of our own true song? Could you imagine a world how that would look, how
It'd be
that would be?
beautiful, wouldn't it?
Could you imagine? So
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of I'm off in my little fantasy world, but
Well, no,
that's
but I
where my
think
inspiration comes from.
absolutely, and I think like we're saying, that if only one person connects with my poetry that
Mm,
day, and I've had so many over the years now, where I will get a message saying privately, on Facebook or
mm.
whatever, or on my phone, I needed that today, Adrian.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah,
And
yeah,
you're like, okay, but
yeah,
it makes me feel. But please keep doing that, everyone. For anyone
yeah.
and I always say, anyone that you like, or that
Mm,
does something, and you get receive them, something from their art, their performance, their whatever. Tell them,
yeah, yeah,
tell them, because it's really important to make that final connection, because they're essentially reaching out to you. They may not
yeah,
know you, but they kind of do
yeah,
know you.
yeah.
Reach out to them and say thank you. I mean, they really, I mean, I appreciate it. So it makes my day. It's the one thing that gets me back up. And even when I've had a bad day and it's like, that didn't go right, this didn't feel good, I'm really struggling, I'm
Mm,
in that place at the moment, I get a message like that. And usually that day or the following day, I'm back on again. You know,
Yeah.
you know, it's encouragement. It's all right. You can do this, Adrian. You know, you can get back up. You can do this, Cheryl. It's okay. You've got this.
Yeah. I
And
think,
we get back up. You know.
yeah, there's that real fundamental urge to share, I think, is what I find with artists.
Yeah.
There's just a fundamental need to share, and that's
Yes.
an incredibly positive thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's
Yeah.
keep sharing.
But let's keep sharing. And I do. I mean, like yourself, I do art workshops.
Mm,
And they're free when I. So I think I've got the Bushy art show on the 8th of June, which is in
okay,
just a week or so time
excellent.
in and I'll be my work will be on display, but also it's out in the park, which will be lovely. And I'm hoping to try and, you know, put some stuff out, you know, do a little, people can come along and just sit and chat. And I
Yeah,
just love that connection, and that they'll talk about all sorts of stuff,
yeah,
and, you know, I'll get to know people that I've not met before, or and actually I start getting regulars that now go, all right, you know, and they'll pop down, they'll come and actually come and say hello, and I cannot thank them enough.
yeah.
It fills me up. It's so
That's
wonderful to be
good.
able to
Yeah,
experience that. So if anyone's around on the, even if you're around on the 8th on a
I've got a
Sunday,
singing workshop.
you guys in workshop.
Yeah.
Well, good, we're
Good,
doing
good.
it, we're
Yeah,
on
we're
it,
doing
yay.
it.
Then, you know, it'd be
All
wonderful.
right, good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, well, good luck with all that, and then yeah, we'll look forward to chatting again soon. And
Then
people
yeah,
can find you on your
soon.
usuals on your socials. I'll link them on the video as well. So
Thank you. Yeah, my website
okay,
stuff. Yes,
fabulous.
absolutely.
Thank you very much, Adrian.
My pleasure. And
Bye.
bye to everybody.